Ladies and gentlemen, this is an article that came out on Vox January 9th, 2020. Now, they talk a lot about opioids all the time, as being one of the biggest, really kills more people than anything, including crime. There's more deaths among people from opioids than black on black crime, for example. There's far more people dying on opioids than black on black crime. Just thought I'd put that out there. I know how that rubs the trolls the wrong way. I just love doing that. Y'all just got to support me on that. So anyway, the rise in meth and cocaine overdoses explained. So America, unfortunately, is a drug nation. It really is. And you can't even say it's not when it's got a long history of being a drug nation. You can go back in the 1800s and look at the opium addiction that was going on. A lot of people were wiped out from that. So it is very much a drug nation. Even during the Civil War, a lot of those soldiers were taking opium. And after the war was over, there was a lot of alcoholism and opium addiction down there. That's why they couldn't rebuild the South, and they had to use the convict lease program prisoners to rebuild the South. That's how it was rebuilt. So, ladies and gentlemen, back on track to this. America's drug overdose plague is still largely dominated by opioid overdose deaths. But stimulants like cocaine and especially methamphetamines seem poised for a comeback. It's already made a comeback. I did some of the stories on meth. In fact, recently I did a meth story because so many people are dying from that. And see, ladies and gentlemen, from meth, they can't use Narcan. Narcan don't work on a meth death. So if they die from meth, it is really, truly over. There's no reviving them. That's it. So provisional federal data suggests that national overdose deaths linked from psychostimulants, such as meth, spiked more than 21% from 2017 to 2018. Overdose death linked to cocaine increased by around 5%. And a lot of times, ladies and gentlemen, they're dying from the cocaine because it's laced with fentanyl. And a lot of, you can't just look at the cocaine and tell that anything is mixed into it. So that's how so many of these people are now dying from the cocaine. And I notice the last few articles, they don't even mention the fentanyl anymore like they used to. They used to mention it a lot. Now, it may be mentioned maybe once in an article, and that's it. They don't mention it, nothing like they did before. Okay. Every opioid plague in American history has been followed by a stimulant epidemic, Stanford drug policy expert Keith Humphreys told me. The number of meth and cocaine are still dwarfed by opioids. In 2018, there were more than 13,000 estimated overdose deaths linked to stimulants, particularly meth, and more than 15,700 linked to cocaine, according to the provisional data. Meanwhile, there were nearly 48,000 overdose deaths linked to opioid, synthetic opioids, including methadone, a category that mainly captures fentanyl, while associated with more than double the fatal overdoses linked to cocaine or meth alone. There's some overlap between drugs in the figure because overdoses involve multiple drugs. Exactly. A lot of times, the people that die from drug overdoses, ladies and gentlemen, have 2, 3, or even more drugs in their system. It is rare for them to die from one drug alone. That's really not that common. 9 times out of 10, these folks have a combination of drugs, sometimes drugs and alcohol, that cause their death. But there are reasons to believe the plague is broader than just opioids. In 2018, study in Science found that while drug overdose deaths spiked in the 1990s and 2000s with the opioid plague, there has been exponential growth in overdose deaths since 1997. That suggests that America's drug problem is getting worse in general, regardless of which drug is involved. Like I said, America is a drug nation, ladies and gentlemen. They have been struggling with drugs from the beginning, and they have never stopped struggling with drug problems. So whenever they try to tell you you're giving out false information, I want you to notice the person that says these things never provides any evidence. They think their word is supposed to carry all kinds of weight. I'm here to tell you it don't. It don't. If you ain't put up no evidence on what you're saying, I don't want to hear from you. Now, I have a butt sore troll that keeps telling me that I'm lying about the low birth rate. I do. Every time I put a low birth rate story out, here he comes. And just like when I talk about opioids, I got another troll that keeps coming around and telling us in the 1960s, the heroin epidemic was worse than the opioid epidemic that we're looking at today. Now, I know he's full of shit. And again, another person that keeps coming around shows no evidence. They think their word carries all the weight in the world. It don't. It don't. That's why when you keep posting those falsehoods, I keep erasing it. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, drug epidemics often cyclical. In the 1960s and 70s, heroin was the big drug of public concern. In the 80s, it was crack cocaine. In the 90s and early 2000s, it was meth. Over the past decade and half, actually 20 years, they're not telling the truth. It was not a decade and a half. It's been actually 21 years. Opioid painkillers, heroin, and then fentanyl became the center of American drug problems. Well, America, like I said, you can even take it beyond the 60s and see all of the epidemics that America went through. Look, they got so heavily into opium, they had opium dens where people went to and got high. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, before in the past, while they were in opium dens getting high, our people were doing sharecropping and getting ripped off, doing backbreaking work day in and day out and getting ripped off. So we were working and they were getting high. It's not clear if the next phase is here yet. Opioids are still a huge problem, but the worry is stimulants will start to pick up if opioids plateau and fall. Right. And see, they're going to be in big trouble if stimulants take over opioids, because now they can't throw Narcan in everybody's hand and tell you to go around and save these meth addicts, because Narcan don't work on them. So if this thing morphs from opioids to meth, and there's deaths and all kinds of fatalities like there is now, but tenfold, they will be in a lot of trouble, because there's nothing that's going to save these people. Ladies and gentlemen, there's not even a drug rehab that works for meth. What they have to do is use psychology and hope that it will work. And in many cases, it just simply don't. So it's not like, opioids where you can go through a withdrawal symptom, and get all of the drugs out of your system. Meth is a whole different ball game, y'all. It's a whole different ball game. And very few people beat meth. It's not a lot of people out here telling stories of beating meth in high numbers. I'm not talking about one or two people. I'm talking about a huge crowd of people that have beat meth. It don't exist. So if this does change over, this is going to be huge in America as far as the human loss is concerned. It's going to be huge, y'all. It's going to be what these folks are not prepared for, and there's nothing they can do about it but stand on the sidelines and watch it happen. Pretty much like what they've done during the opioid plague. Most of the time, these folks don't even want rehab. And the EMTs and police and fire departments are reviving the same person multiple times every single week. But remember, they will not jail their people. They'll make all kinds of policies to keep them free while they're out here dropping all over the place on a drug high. But y'all, please tell me what you think about the rise of meth and cocaine overdoses across America. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.